The first betrayal didn't come in the ballroom. It came weeks before, through a text message. "Don't you dare wear that silly costume," my father wrote. No greeting, no love, just contempt. Then my brother chimed in later that night, laughing over the phone. "You're seriously going to walk down the aisle in a uniform? People will think it's Halloween." I stared at the screen, the glow reflecting in my eyes, my stomach turning. These weren't strangers mocking me. These were the men who were supposed to stand beside me as family. My name is Colleen. I am 34 years old, and I serve as a Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. And that wedding day became the battlefield I never expected. The venue was a grand military chapel on base in Norfolk, Virginia. The pews gleamed with polished wood, banners hung in crisp lines, and the smell of fresh lilies mingled with the faint tang of brass polish. My fiancé, Mark, stood tall at the altar, a decorated Marine officer who had walked through fire with me and never once questioned my worth. But my father? He never forgave me for acting like a man. He wanted a daughter in pearls and dresses, not in boots and medals. At family dinners, he would scoff at my rank insignias, mutter under his breath about women playing soldier. My brother was worse, parroting his insults, mocking every accomplishment, hiding his envy behind jokes. He worked at a local car dealership, comfortable in his small life, yet somehow felt entitled to belittle mine. The morning of the wedding, as I stood in my quarters fastening my dress whites, the weight of my uniform settled over me. 4 stars glinted on my shoulders, each one earned through years of sacrifice. My reflection stared back at me in the mirror, strong, steady, unshaken. But deep inside, a memory burned. I was 22 again, trudging through mud and sealed joint training. My father had come to visit the base, standing with other families behind the fence. When he saw me stumble under the weight of my rucksack, he shook his head and muttered loud enough for others to hear, "She'll wash out by next week." That humiliation had driven me then. It fueled me now. The chapel filled quickly. Rows of Marines, sailors, and officers took their seats. The hum of whispered conversations rose under the stained glass light. My father sat near the front, jaw tight, dressed in a suit that looked borrowed rather than owned. My brother lounged beside him, grinning like he was waiting for me to trip. I walked through the doors. Gasps rippled. The white of my uniform shone under the arching beams of sunlight. The 4 stars caught the light like fire. For a heartbeat, the room stilled. And then, boots thudded, chairs scraped. 100 soldiers, men and women who had fought, bled, and triumphed beside me, rose in unison. Their movements were precise, their voices thunderous. "Admiral on deck!" The sound echoed through the chapel, vibrating against the stained glass windows, shaking the air itself. I saw my father's face drain, his mouth falling open, his eyes wide. My brother's smirk withered, replaced by disbelief. Their mockery dissolved in front of witnesses who saw me for what I was, not a costume, not a joke, but the highest honor of a life spent serving. My heels struck against the floor as I walked forward, each step louder than my father's silence. Mark's eyes shone with pride. The soldiers saluted, hands raised, the chapel ablaze with unity. My father lowered his gaze, unable to meet mine. For the first time in my life, he looked small. But this wasn't the end. This was just the opening volley in a battle years in the making. The echo of "Admiral on deck" still hung in the air as I reached the altar. My father hadn't moved. He sat stiff, his knuckles white against the pew. My brother's eyes darted from the soldiers to me, as if trying to reconcile the sister he mocked with the admiral who commanded respect in every corner of the chapel. But I didn't pause for them. I kept walking. Every salute in that room was louder than their laughter had ever been. After the ceremony, sunlight poured through the chapel doors as the guests filed into the reception hall. It was decorated with navy blues and gold trim, flags hanging behind the long head table, the air buzzing with the smell of roasted chicken and champagne. Marines joked, sailors swapped stories, and officers laughed heartily. But I could feel my father's disapproval radiating like a storm cloud at the corner table. Mark squeezed my hand as we entered the hall. "Ignore him," he whispered. "He doesn't define you." I nodded, but part of me couldn't let it go. A lifetime of mockery doesn't vanish with a single salute. As the reception unfolded, toasts were raised. Mark's commanding officer spoke of his loyalty, his bravery. One of my former subordinates stood and, voice cracking with emotion, recalled how I pulled him out of the surf during a training accident that nearly drowned him. The room erupted in cheers. Glasses clinked. Then, against all expectation, my father rose. The room fell quiet. Forks stilled against plates, glasses lowered. His suit looked wrinkled now, sweat staining the collar. He cleared his throat, gripping his glass too tightly. "Well," he began, forcing a laugh, "I suppose I was wrong about my daughter." Murmurs. Eyes shifted between us. He went on, voice shaky but defiant. "But let's not exaggerate here. She might wear stars, but at the end of the day, she's still just Colleen. My little girl who couldn't ride a bike without training wheels until she was 12. Don't let the uniform fool you. Underneath, she's just another girl playing dress-up." Laughter sputtered from a few relatives at his table. My brother chuckled loudly, eager to back him. The soldiers didn't laugh. Not one. A surge of heat rose in my chest. My glass shook in my hand, not from fear, but from fury. I stood slowly, the scrape of my chair piercing the silence. "Dad," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "You've mocked me my whole life. You mocked me when I enlisted. You mocked me when I earned my commission. You mocked me when I led men older and stronger than me into the fire, but the difference between then and now is simple." I gestured around the hall. Soldiers stared back with unwavering loyalty. Mark's hand rested over his heart. Colleen, my younger sister, blinked back tears. "Now," I said. "The world sees the truth you never wanted to admit." The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel strike I'd ever heard. My father's face flushed. My brother looked down at his plate, suddenly finding no laughter left in him. The admiral who presided over the reception stood then, glass in hand, voice booming, to Admiral Harper, a leader, a warrior, and a woman who earned every star. The hall roared in unison, glasses lifted, cheers thundered. My father sat back down, his shoulders sagging, a man stripped of authority in a room he could not control. But pride wasn't enough. For years, he had stolen moments from me, confidence, joy, self-worth. Now, for the first time, I realized I had the power to take something back. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about finally ending the hold he had over me. And the opportunity to do it would come sooner than anyone in that hall expected. The reception carried on with music and laughter. But beneath the glow of chandeliers and the clinking of glasses, my mind was locked on one truth. This wasn't over. My father had tried to humiliate me even at my wedding. He wasn't just stubborn. He was dangerous, a saboteur in my own family. As the band played soft jazz, I excused myself from the head table and stepped out onto the balcony. The cool Virginia night wrapped around me, salty air drifting from the nearby harbor. The sky was streaked with fading gold, and the faint hum of ships carried across the water. I needed the air. I needed space to think. Then I heard footsteps. "You okay?" It was Colleen, my younger sister, dressed in a navy blue gown that matched the reception colors. Her eyes were soft, but behind them was fire. I nodded. "I'm fine, just needed a minute." She leaned against the railing, looking out. "He'll never stop, you know, Dad. He'll keep mocking, keep trying to pull you down until someone forces him to face himself." I swallowed hard. "And who's going to do that?" She looked at me then, steady. "You. The same way you've faced every other battle." Her words dragged me back to another night years ago. I was in Kabul, dust burning in my lungs, crouched behind a wall as bullets cracked overhead. My team looked to me. The youngest officer, the only woman. Fear threatened to choke me, but I remembered something my commanding officer had once said. When they doubt you, lead louder. That night, I rose, barked orders, and led my team through hell. We came out breathing. And now, standing on that balcony, I realized my wedding was just another battlefield. When I returned inside, the DJ announced the father-daughter dance. My stomach turned. The thought of his hand on mine, guiding me across the floor as if he hadn't just mocked me minutes earlier, made my blood boil. But tradition demanded it, or so everyone thought. I walked to the center of the floor. My father approached, a smug tilt to his chin, as if nothing had happened. His tie was crooked, his breath faintly laced with whiskey. He extended his hand, and I let it hang there, untouched. Gasps rippled across the hall. The music stalled. I turned to the soldiers at their tables. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice firm, carrying across the room, "would one of you do me the honor?" For a heartbeat, silence. Then a decorated captain rose, broad shoulders, silver hair, a man I had served beside in 2 deployments. He walked forward, bowed slightly, and took my hand with the respect my father had never given me. The band struck up again. We danced, poised, elegant, commanding. The room erupted in cheers. And my father? He froze, hand still dangling, face blanching with humiliation as whispers spread like wildfire. Later, while guests devoured cake and champagne, he cornered me near the bar. His eyes burned, his voice a venomous hiss. "You embarrassed me." I leaned in, my stars catching the light. "No, Dad. I revealed you." He clenched his jaw, but said nothing. For the first time, he had no words. The night wound down, but my resolve sharpened. Humiliation wasn't enough. I wanted finality, something that would end his reign of mockery once and for all. The chance came in the most unexpected way. A toast request from the Admiral presiding over the evening. "Rear Admiral Harper," he announced, "would you share a few words with us all, perhaps about what this day truly means?" All eyes turned to me. Soldiers, officers, family. Even my father, who sat rigid, his face pale, knowing he was about to be stripped bare in front of everyone. I lifted my glass, heart steady, words forming like a blade in my mind. Tomorrow, I would end him. The Admiral's request hung in the air like a drum roll. I stood slowly, my heels clicking against the polished floor, the weight of 100 eyes pressing down. My glass caught the light, the gold liquid inside trembling, but my hand steady. I looked around the reception hall. Soldiers in dress blues and whites, family in gowns and suits, banners rippling slightly as the ceiling fans hummed. Pride, envy, curiosity, all mingled in the air. And then my gaze landed on him, my father, slouched in his chair, face tight, jaw clenched. A man who had mocked me my entire life, daring me to fail. I raised my glass. "I was told," I began, my voice carrying over the music that had died away, "that I should never wear this uniform, that it was a costume, a disguise, that I would never survive, never lead, never endure." A ripple moved through the crowd. Some soldiers exchanged glances. My brother shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "But here's the truth," I continued. "This uniform isn't a disguise. It is who I am. Every star on my shoulder carries the weight of sacrifice, of comrades who never came home, of nights spent under fire so others could wake up safe. It is not a costume. It is the truest part of me." The hall grew silent. Even the children at the back stilled. I lowered my voice, sharp as a blade. And the loudest voices telling me I'd never make it were not enemies overseas. They were family, my own blood. Gasps. Aunts stiffened. My father's hand tightened around his glass until I thought it might shatter. I remembered another day, years ago. Standing in the driveway, duffel slung over my shoulder, ready to ship out for deployment. My father leaning against the doorframe, smirking. "Go play soldier. We'll see how long you last." I had walked away with his laughter echoing behind me. Now I faced him with a room full of witnesses. I lifted my glass higher. To the ones who mocked me, belittled me, told me I was nothing, thank you. Because your doubt forged me harder than steel. Your scorn pushed me further than I ever thought I could go. You wanted me small. Instead, you made me unstoppable. The soldiers erupted, voices booming, glasses raised. "Here! Here!" The hall thundered with applause, the kind that shakes walls. My father shrank further into his chair, swallowed whole by the sound of 100 voices lifting me where he had tried to bury me. When the noise died, I stepped closer to his table. Only he and I seemed to exist in that moment. "You texted me that my uniform was a costume," I said softly, so only he in the front row could hear. I leaned closer, my stars glinting inches from his eyes. "But tonight the world saluted me, not you. Tonight the mask came off, and everyone saw who you really are. A bitter man drowning in his own envy." His face drained of color. My brother looked down at his plate, ashamed. I straightened, turned back to the hall, and lifted my glass one final time. To service, to sacrifice, to truth louder than lies. The room roared again. Later that night, as Mark and I drove away beneath the sweep of military base floodlights, I looked out the window one last time. My father stood alone outside the hall, shoulders slumped, eyes dark with something between shame and defeat. For years he had stolen my pride with his words, but now, before soldiers, family, and God, I had taken it back. The battle was over. The Admiral had won. He mocked my uniform. Now he bows to it,